What are we discussing on today's Locked on Diamondbacks podcast? We will be looking at some notes and some injury updates from the first week of camp and which positions are the D-backs the absolute best at in the NL West.
You are Locked on Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? Always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas, a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks about Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. Now, for today's show, we are going to be talking about some notes, some injury updates from the first week of spring training and camp, of course. And then we're going to be looking at which positions are the D-backs the absolute best at in the NL West. But before we get into that conversation, I first want to say thank you for making Locked on Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube, so please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. Getting close to 1,000 subscribers. Want to hit it before opening day. Still got a little bit over a month away, so please hit subscribe to Locked on Diamondbacks on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, let's jump into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about the first week of spring training, right? I guess we could call that camp. I don't know what the official term is before the games even start. I guess we could refer to it as spring training, but we got some injury updates out of spring training, and we also got some good quotes out of Torey Lovullo and the front office and Zach Gallen, because the D-backs are coming into camp hungry this spring training. It sounds like dudes like Zach Gallen couldn't wait to get to spring training after the World Series, because the World Series was a great test for a lot of these guys of what their ceiling and potential can be. But after getting the taste of the World Series and not finishing the job, these guys were ready to start the next season. And that makes me so happy covering this Diamondbacks team this year. Torey Lovullo talking throughout this week, he said coming into the camp, they're not setting expectations for themselves, but they're going to live up to a standard, the Diamondback standard, because with expectations, you're either going to set yourself up for limitations or failure. I love that quote from Torey Lovullo. Expectations can sometimes not be good for a ball club. Putting expectations on this D-backs team, I mean, obviously they have a level of expectations, right? We saw them come off the World Series. We expect this team to get back to another postseason. But in that locker room, they shouldn't be putting expectations on themselves. They have their own singular focused goal that they're trying to accomplish every single day. And that singular focus is earning the inch, winning the margins, sacrificing, and being better today. That is the mantra that each D-backs player lives off of, plays off of. That's the mantra that Torey Lovullo preaches in the locker room. Earn the inch, win the margins, sacrifice, and be better today. If the D-backs can win that individual battle, the D-backs can accomplish that individual goal every single day, then over the course of a long season, it will lead to long-term success. Of course, every D-backs player wants to get back to the postseason, wants to get back to another World Series, but they're going to take this season day by day, win each individual game, stack up the W's, and then hopefully you look up at the end of the season and you have more W's than every other team in Major League Baseball, including the postseason. So that's what the D-backs are focused with. They are taking it day by day. They are not trying to already rush themselves to the postseason. They are trying to play to a standard for once in their franchise history. This D-backs team never had a real level of consistency. Like, you look at their franchise history, the D-backs are not one of those teams that put together a string of postseason appearances. 2001 and 2002 was the last time the D-backs had back-to-back playoff appearances. That was over 20 years ago. So for the D-backs to go back to the postseason consecutively this year, it would be a major accomplishment in their franchise history. They're not going to be able to do that if they have this long overhaul view of the season. You have to focus individually with your plight every single day to accomplish your goals. That is what the D-backs are trying to do right now. Live to a standard and not live to expectations. We, of course, know the D-backs have expectations, but within that locker room, they are hungry and they just want to go out there and win every single game. And hopefully that leads to the World Series at the end of the season. A guy like Zach Gallen, he's super hungry. Torey Lovullo has already talked about how it feels like 90% of the roster was already there from day one. This D-back squad is not playing entering 2024. And I'm really excited for what this D-backs team can do this season, because I think they're going to be playing with a big chip on their shoulder the whole year. And then before you get into segment number 2 and segment number 3, I just want to give some quick injury updates from spring training. Kevin Ginkel dealing with some elbow soreness. Right now, the imaging has come back clean. It looks like he will be okay. Just need to do some maybe extended rest throughout spring training. Definitely don't want Kevin Ginkel to get hurt. He was a massive piece of this D-back squad last year, going to be the setup man for the D-backs in 2024. Really important breakout season this past year. So getting Kevin Ginkel all the way back and healthy, very crucial to this D-backs team's future plans in 2024. Dre Jameson, he looks like he's going to be out all of 2024. This is someone that hurt his elbow last season, and doesn't look like he's coming back. Still recovering from Tommy John. Dre Jameson, someone that was not a highly touted prospect, but someone that did have a lot of potential. And when you watched him, just had really good stuff. And now it's going to be a while before we see Dre Jameson back with the D-backs. He was pretty good in 2022. The numbers were pretty solid in 2023, despite the eye test not always being there. But Dre Jameson so far has shown some level of talent, and he will be an interesting piece once he's back in the fold with the D-backs, hopefully in 2025. Corbin Martin, fully healthy, ready to go. I believe he's the final piece from that Zach Greinke deal that's still on this D-backs roster, which is kind of crazy to say out loud. JB Bruscakis, Seth Beer, Josh Rojas. I'm pretty confident all three of them. I know Josh Rojas ain't. JB Bruscakis, he still might be dealing with injury or something like that. Seth Beer, who knows where he is. I mean, that trade has been a wash, but Corbin Martin, still a piece that is trying to make a name for himself with the D-backs. He's in camp, he's in spring training, so we'll see if he could maybe earn his spot on the roster as a back-end bullpen guy. Still had some pretty nice stuff whenever we did see him with the D-backs, just also had a lot of negatives as well. Tommy Henry, also back and fully healthy, competing for that number 5 spot in the rotation. He seems to have the inside track. Tommy Henry was very solid last year for the D-backs as a back-end rotation guy. And I think we're all rooting for Tommy Henry to win that number 5 job this year. I don't think we trust the Ryan Nelsons of the world. And so Tommy Henry, you definitely are the favorite to win that job right now. And all D-backs fans would be pretty happy with that outcome. Then last but not least, Humberto Castellanos, maybe he is the least. He's back after missing most of last season with injury. He's a non-roster invite. Castellanos, never been a fan of him watching him on this D-backs team. As a non-roster invite, I'm probably okay keeping him in AAA. Now we'll talk about which positions the D-backs are absolutely the best in the NL West. But if you want to bet on the D-backs World Series odds for 2024, then the best place to do that is, of course, FanDuel Sportsbook, because get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. or if your bet wins, bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live game parlays, exclusive props, and more. My favorite thing to do is the same game parlay with the Lakers, 80 over in points, 80 over in rebounds on the Lakers money line. That money line leg of the parlay typically doesn't hit, but the Lakers have won 6 of their last 7 games heading into the All-Star break, and it made me some money. So thank you, Lakers. If you want to win some money via NBA basketball, just visit fanduel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot today. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks about Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. Now let's get back to the podcast and discuss which positions the D-backs are absolutely the best at in the NL West. These are singular positions. When thinking about this topic, I thought I was going to do more broad position groups, like do the D-backs have the best lineup, rotation, and I still might do that pod next week or before the season starts. But for today, as we enter spring training, I actually want to talk about specific positions that I think the D-backs are the best at in the NL West. The first one, I do believe the D-backs have the best right fielder in the National League West, and of course, Corbin Carroll. Now, this one is a little finicky because, first of all, you have to ask yourself, is just Fernando Tatis a full-time right fielder now? Because if he is, then considering how good we've seen him be, you might say Fernando Tatis is the best right fielder in the NL West, but we've also seen him play a ton of infield throughout his career. And also, he missed a season because of injuries and steroid use. And then last season, he didn't play the full year because of the same thing. So for Fernando Tatis, the last couple of years, 2022 was kind of a wash. 2023 was very good, but he didn't look exactly like full level Fernando Tatis. So as kind of a 2-year sample size now with Corbin Carroll being absolutely electric as a rookie, I think it's fair to say that Corbin Carroll is a better right fielder. Also, if you take into defense, I know Fernando Tatis just won the Gold Glove, but I think overall, I mean, Corbin Carroll has the power, not as much as Tatis, but still 25 home runs, 50 plus stolen bases, and elite defense. I mean, he put up a stat line that was pretty elite as a rookie. And if Corbin Carroll does take that year 2 leap, I don't see why it's crazy to say Corbin Carroll is a better right fielder than Fernando Tatis when you also put into the context what Fernando Tatis has done the last 2 seasons. And also, if you're going to push back against Corbin Carroll, I think the argument would be he played more left field than right field last year, but Lourdes Gurriel is the left fielder for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Corbin Carroll, when Lourdes Gurriel is playing left, he will be in right field. So I consider Corbin Carroll the right fielder of the D-backs, despite playing more left field for the D-backs last season. And there's really no one else in the National League West that can make an argument for the best right fielder. I mean, if the Dodgers still had Mookie Betts in right field, I think they would actually probably be in the lead in this conversation. But Mookie Betts is now a full-time second baseman. So you're definitely saying Corbin Carroll is better than, I don't know, Jason Hayward or Teoscar Hernandez, whoever is playing right field for the LA Dodgers next year. James Outman, I don't really care who it is. Corbin Carroll is definitely better than all those guys. The San Francisco Giants, I mean, they've signed Jorge Soler, but he's more of a left fielder. We'll see how good Jung-Ho Lee is as a rookie, but as it currently stands, I'm taking Corbin Carroll as the best right fielder in the NL West. Not by a mile. I think it's probably just by hair, because I definitely believe a fully healthy Fernando Tatis Jr. is probably a better player than Corbin Carroll. But as it stands right here, right now, February 15, 2024, I think I would have to say Corbin Carroll over Fernando Tatis right now. But by the end of next season at this time, I wouldn't be surprised if we were saying Fernando Tatis over Corbin Carroll. And then another thing that the D-backs are absolutely the best in the NL West, this is not exactly a singular position. I kind of cheated on this one, but the D-backs have the best defensive combo, the core 4. This is the 4 most defensive the four most important defensive positions in baseball, and the D-backs have the best core four of these four positions in the NL West. Center field, first base, shortstop, and catcher. The D-backs have the best defensive foursome for that mix in the NL West. You look at Alek Thomas, elite defensive center fielder. His ability to track down balls, his instinct, his speed. There may not be a player better in Major League Baseball. I don't think the Fangraph stats say he's the best, but the eye test would definitely tell you that. And part of it just because he just doesn't have the arm strength. I mean, none of the D-backs outfielders really do. Corbin Carroll can get to any ball as well, but can he throw out guys? No, neither can Alek Thomas. And that's okay. With his ability to basically get to any ball and the amount of robberies we've seen in deep center field, tracking balls over his shoulder, making leaps at the wall, Alek Thomas, I think, is the best defensive center fielder in the NL West. And I think Christian Walker, when you look at the Fangraphs numbers, by a mile, Christian Walker, the best defensive first baseman in the NL West. Freddie has been an elite defensive first baseman throughout his career, and he still is. But you look at the numbers, it's Christian Walker by a landslide as the best defensive first baseman. The Padres' projected first baseman right now, Jake Cronenworth, he's definitely not better defensively than Christian Walker. Lamont Wade of the Giants, hell no. And also, we're not going to be talking about the Colorado Rockies when doing this exercise. I'm sorry, Paul Holden, Locked On Rockies. They're just not relevant enough for me to bring up. As it currently stands, we'll see in a couple years. I love Nolan Jones, love a couple other guys on that roster, but I don't think they really have a best of at any position right now. D-backs, maybe the best defensive shortstop. That's a little bit more of an argument. That's why I said it's the core four of those guys. But their defensive shortstop, Geraldo Perdomo, is a very good defensive shortstop. And when we compare him to the Dodgers, Gavin Lux, I would probably take Perdomo there. You compare him to the San Diego Padres, like Bogarts has never been known as an elite defender. Giants, they might have Marco Luciano as, I think he's still a rookie. I'm not even sure. Not very proven. Like Geraldo Perdomo is a solid defensive shortstop. And then also the backup to Perdomo could potentially be Jordan Lawler, who I think day one is an above average, if not elite defensive shortstop. I think he did flash that in a small sample size with the D-backs. That glove, I think, is really strong. So when I look at the combination of both the starter and the backup, D-backs have really strong defense at shortstop. And then the catcher, Gabriel Moreno, best defensive catcher in baseball this past year. You look at throwing out guys, his pop time, like Gabriel Moreno is absolutely elite in those situations. Moreno, I can't believe we got him. Like talking with Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres, he's like, how did the D-backs trade Dalton Varsho for Moreno? And they got Lourdes Gurriel on that deal. Absolutely fleece of a trade by Mike Hazen. I was so sad to see Dalton Varsho go. I thought that was going to be a trade that bit the D-backs back in the butt. Not because I didn't like the players that were incoming, but I was like, Varsho's now the best defensive player in Major League Baseball with his power starting to uptick, with the potential of still 20 to 30 stolen bases. Like if he ever puts together a good slash line, Dalton Varsho has superstar potential, and we did not see it this past season. Meanwhile, we saw Gabriel Moreno be the best defensive catcher and a very good offensive catcher for the D-backs, and Lourdes Gurriel held it down in the outfield all season. Great trade by Mike Hazen. And so for segment number 2, D-backs, best right fielder in the NL West, and best defensive combo of center field, first baseman, shortstop, and catcher. Now I have 3 other positions that I believe the D-backs are the best at in the NL West. But one thing that is also the best is back blaze, because back blaze makes backing up and accessing your data astonishingly easy. Unlimited cloud backup for Macs, PCs, and businesses for just $99 a year. Easily protect business data through a centrally managed admin. Protect all the data on your machines automatically. 1-year file retention and version history. Over 55 billion files restored for customers. Visit backblaze.com/lockedonmlb so they know where you came from and you can continue to support the show. Recommended by the New York Times, Inc. Magazine, Macworld, PC World, LifeWire, Wired, Tom's Guide, 9 to 5 Mac, and more. Receive a fully featured, no risk-free trial at backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. Go there, play with it, start protecting yourself from potential bad times. Start today. Backblaze.com/lockedonmlb. All right. Let's get back to the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. I got 3 more positions for you that I think the D-backs are absolutely the best at in the NOS. I will be honest, this exercise and thought experiment was not as easy as I thought it was going to be, because I was like, all right, the D-backs have at least 4 or 5 positions that they're the best at in the NOS. Not really the case. That's why I had to go with that defensive combination for one of my position battle wins for the D-backs, because it was a little bit tougher than I realized when I first wanted to do this exercise, but we're still going to roll through it. Gets a little bit more controversial from here on out. So if you have any pushback, don't forget to shout out at CareerThomas24 for my Twitter account, Locked On Diamondbacks on Twitter, Instagram, or look us up on YouTube. You can slide in the YouTube comments and say some junk to me if you want to. Because next up, I think the D-backs have the best number 1 starter in the NLS. Now, that could be highly controversial. I do think it's very close, but I do think Zach Allen, based off what we've seen from him during his D-backs tenure, I don't think it's crazy to say Zach Allen has been the best pitcher in the NL West for the last, maybe the best pitcher in the NL West for the last few years, but I definitely think he's the best pitcher right now in the NL West. Coming off a season where he finished 3rd in Cy Young voting and was probably the Cy Young favorite for most of the year. Over 200 innings pitched, over 200 strikeouts, an elite season. The year before, finished 5th in Cy Young voting, and it honestly felt like he was the second best pitcher the whole year in the National League. I think most people would tell you he was either the second or third best pitcher. I think 5th is kind of crazy. 2022 led the league in whip, hits per 9, 184 innings pitched, 2.54 ERA. Now 2021 was his outlier year, but then you look at 2020, 2.75 ERA, 2019, 2.89 ERA. Like, he has a career 3.21 ERA. And with the D-backs, it's a career slightly higher, 3.24, because of that 2021 season. But he's been an elite number 1 starter throughout his time with the D-backs, near double-digit strikeouts per 9, an elite whip. He doesn't walk dudes. He doesn't give up a ton of hits. He doesn't give up a ton of home runs. Like, Zach Allen is as perfect as a number 1 starter as you would want to be. Just want to see him reach another level in the postseason. He was able to do it to close out the World Series, but need him better throughout the entirety of the postseason, because we need an elite Zach Allen in the playoffs if we want to get back to another World Series. And just comparing Zach Allen to the rest of the NL West, like, Yamamoto has potential to be better than Zach Allen, but he's an unknown right now. If you had to bet which player is going to be better next season, Gallen or Yamamoto, I would definitely take Gallen. Glasnow, talent-wise, is probably better than Gallen. But guess what? Glasnow's never pitched more than 120 innings. Meanwhile, Zach Allen, from start to finish, if you include the postseason, he had like 240 innings pitched on his belt. Zach Allen is a workhorse type pitcher. I honestly think the pitcher that's the closest to Zach Allen in the NL West is Logan Webb, because I think Logan Webb is that guy. So if you told me Logan Webb over Zach Allen, I wouldn't hate you. I wouldn't be mad at you. I would disagree with you, but it is definitely close in the NL West. Who's the number 1 starter? I mean, if you get a full season of Yamamoto and Glasnow, I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them is better than Gallen. If you told me Logan Webb is better than Gallen in 2024, I wouldn't be surprised either. But if you told me Yu Darvish is, I would be, because Pooh Darvish is absolutely cooked. Zach Allen, best starter in the NL West. How about this one? Another cheat one. D-backs have the best closer setup man in the NL West. Another very close, controversial one. And to be honest, if you look at last year's numbers, I wouldn't be mad at you if you said the Dodgers have a better setup man closer, because Gratterall was like a 1.2 ERA guy last year. Phillips was like a 2 flat ERA guy last year. Like, they were both elite for the LA Dodgers. But I think Kevin Ginkel and Paul Sewald, I trust them a little bit more because of their track record. And I also think both of them just have I'm going to throw out a word that you can't quantify when you look at the stats. Intangibles, baby. I think Seawald and Ginkel just have another level of moxie that most setup man and closers don't have. I think Gratterall has it. I don't know if Evan Phillips has it, but I know both Paul Seawald and Kevin Ginkel both pitch like every pitch is going to be their last time in Major League Baseball. They both pitch with that fire in their belly, the passion of like a child, to be honest. So I think Ginkel and Seawald, I have more trust in them than a Phillips Gratterall combination entering next year. Giants also very close. Doval and either Rogers brother both are in a elite combination as well. Doval, I think that's how you say his name. Camilo Doval. Him or either Rogers brother is also an elite combination, but I like Ginkel, Seawald just a little bit more. Padres, I don't think, are really in this conversation after letting Josh Hader walk to the Houston Astros. And then finally, I think the D-backs have the best number 3 starter in the NL West. The Dodgers, Walker Buehler, starting the season on the injured list. If you told me you were getting a fully healthy Walker Buehler entering the season, then it would be a little bit tougher, maybe. I would still say he was coming off Tommy John. But considering he's starting the year on the IL, it looks like Bobby Miller will be the number 3. And I'm taking Eduardo Rodriguez over Bobby Miller. Erod is a very good pitcher coming off a season where he should have been an all-star for the Detroit Tigers. Very upsetting that he didn't make it, I'm sure, for him. 3.3 ERA in 152 innings pitched. He's kind of had an up and down career, a career 4.03 ERA, but we've seen Erod when he's at his best. He is a top 10 Cy Young candidate when he's at his best. Can strike out folks, can limit the amount of home runs and walks he gives up. Like, I like Erod as just your number 3 starter. And again, just comparing him to the rest of the NL West, like, we already said the Dodgers argument. The Padres, like Michael King, according to RotoChamp, is their projected number 3 starter as of right now. We'll see. Like, the Giants might be Jordan Hicks. Like, the rest of the NL West, when we look at their projected number 3 starters, just not very strong. It's really going to be Erod versus whoever's the number 3 starter for the Dodgers. And right now, as it stands today, I would take Erod over any other number 3 starter in the NL West. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. We'll always be checking in from spring training and just seeing what's going on from camp. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.